Okay, so in the last video I decided that my arc was probably causing my dose distribution to be a little bit ropey anteriorly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my arc, and I'm going to do something like this now. So I'm going to do an arc that still spares the rectum. So it starts there and ends there. Okay, and what I'm going to have to do again is run my arc geometry tool. So I'm going to click go and fine tune, remember, and get that to fit the fields for me. And then what I'm going to do is go into planning, Viii optimization. I'm going to hit close, and then let's have another go at this. Okay, so in the last video we saw that we really bumped up the priority here to say that it had to meet this as an absolute minimum. Let's just turn off some of these structures again, but actually that was massively at the expense of everything else. So let's just give it a second just to sort itself out. Can you see how it's starting to optimize the plan and bring it down for us? So actually, I've said the absolute maximum dose I'm prepared to accept is 77.1, but on the protocol we said it was 79.8. So why don't we change that to 79.8, and that just gives it a little bit more to play with in terms of a fighting chance to meet that. And what I'm going to do is knock this back to 75 just to get everything a little bit more even, to see what happens. Okay, so we can see here that it's really easily meeting these constraints, but it's not meeting these constraints here. So we can see that it's going below the line there, below the dots there, but over the dots there. So that tells me we're overdosing here. So what I could do is say, actually, you're meeting these really easily, these three. So let's make these a little bit less important. So let's not worry about them. Let's reduce how important they are, because you're meeting that quite easily. So I'm going to reduce that to 30. And what I'm going to do is increase that a little bit more and say, actually, meeting them is twice as important. And then we'll let it optimize at that and see if it can meet that for us. So once again, it's running its intermediate calculation, so I'll just press pause there. And this is that the dose distribution, and remember we need to go back and normalize it each time, which is a bit of a pain, but that's one of the seems to be a bug in the planning system. So 100% at target mean, and let's have a look. So we can see now we've still got this splash of dose, but it's actually spread out much more than it is elsewhere. Okay, so we've added those two in. So let's have a think about adding the bladder into it now. Okay, so we're going to go back to Viii optimization, and we're going to continue from our previous optimization, and let's just click go for a moment, and let's just see where it is with this. And once again, I'm going to turn off everything other than things I'm interested in at the moment. Okay, so we can still see it's still struggling to meet these ones here. So what I would do is have a go at maybe upping the priorities on these further, and saying that that's much more important to reach that. So it's very much an iterative process. What I'm going to do now is just hit pause on here a second, and I'm going to add my bladder. Okay, so if we look on our tolerances again on our protocol, we can see that we've got 3 tolerances for the bladder. So I'm going to click there and I'm going to go add upper 1, 2, 3, and my tolerances for the bladder V50 is 50%. My V60 is less than 25%. And my V74 is less than 5%. So that's what I've asked it to do. And I'm just going to unpause it, and let's pop this line on now. And you can see that these pink dots are the ones that it's wanting to calculate on. So once again, I'll let it run its calculation and we'll come back in a second. Okay, so now everything's in the prescription. I've got a feeling that the plan's still not going to be clinically acceptable, but at this point we can start to have a look at it on the DVH and to get a feel for what's intolerance and what's not. So remember, the DVH that we see in the optimizer is the fluence, but what we're actually interested in is this, so what the actual final distribution is on the patient with the leaf sequences. So we're going to do planning, plan normalization, and we're going to normalize again to the mean, and we can evaluate it exactly the same as we have done previously, how we did our 3D plan. So we can add our lines on and have a look to see what our dose distribution is looking like. Okay, so I can see straight away that that's not looking quite right, and again, looking at my rectum tolerances, I can see my V74 should be less than 3%. So we're not a million miles off there now, are we? And what was the other one? V70, 15%. So we're quite a bit over on that one. So that's the priority. Obviously, when you do this, you need to spend a little bit more time than me going through them and just seeing exactly where we are. So for me, the priority is this point here and getting my PTV coverage sorted. And obviously, we've added the bladder into the mix now, so we can have a look up our bladder. So let's go back to the optimizer. And we're going to continue from the previous. And again, we're going to optimize, and it was this point here that it was struggling with, around that part on the curve, not on the bladder, sorry, on the rectum. Let's just turn the lines off because I'm confusing myself. There we go. Was over here, so we can see it's still really struggling to meet this point here. So let's increase this even more and say that that's about, let's increase that to 65, and it's still not meeting our lower point there either, is it? So let's let it run at that, and what we might have to do is reduce the priorities elsewhere. So just bumping numbers up doesn't necessarily help. It's very much about, if you increase something, you've got to reduce something elsewhere in order for it to kind of, you need to be showing it what the compromises are you're prepared to expect. So it's very much an iterative process, and something that if I was doing this for real now, I would spend quite a bit of time, potentially certainly in the old days, a couple of hours to adjusting this, and so it might take you quite a while to get somewhere close in terms of deciding what's important, what's not. The other thing that you can do that I've not yet shown you is, as well as changing the priorities, you can actually change the points themselves. So you could say that, actually, I know I'm not going to meet that, so I'm prepared for it to actually be up there, and then that's what the planning system is going to aim towards. Can you see if I move that there, it moves to that straight away. In fact, if I move it all the way over here, let's just see. So it's starting to change the plan to do what I've asked it to do. Similarly, if I was to move this down here, let's see what it does. So straight away it tries to meet what I've asked it to do. It starts to move down. So it's very much that process of just changing those numbers and changing your priorities to find a compromise to the puzzle that works, really, because essentially that's what it is. If I was to, for instance, change that all the way up to 70 maybe, then that would straight away, hopefully, can you see it's trying to meet that point, because I've now said that that's really, really important. So have a play with that, and we'll have a chat as a group about how to optimize our plans.